April speaker, Terry Shaw, has been helping people tell their stories for more than 30 years. He's worked as a newspaper reporter and columnist, a copywriter and publicist, a freelance book editor, and a content manager for a Fortune 500 company. He also serves on the board of the Tennessee Mountain Writers and is a past president of the Knoxville Writers Guild. Terry and partner Brad Lifford own Howling Hills Publishing, focusing on the nonfiction niche market. We think you'll enjoy Terry's energetic and informative presentation. So now, here's Terry.
Well, thank you for having me. So I've been doing this a long time. On our social media page on Howling Hills Publishing, my first press pass from 1986, the Corey Journal is up there, and my sarcastic partner wrote, "Young reporter, serial killer, you decide." Comments are going about 50-50. It was a young reporter, I swear. So I started out as a reporter at the Corey Journal in my little hometown in northwestern Pennsylvania. I worked on a handful of states, West Virginia, Maine, New York. I did some freelancing down here in Tennessee. So I feel like I've seen a lot, and as a writer and as an editor. And so what I'm going to talk about are some common advice. You've probably heard a lot of it, but I'll give you some examples of why it holds true. My partner, Brad Lifford, we both work at Eastman Chemical up in Kingsport, and he's an old news hound like me. His background's a little bit different. He did a lot of entertainment writing. He did a lot of sports writing. I was more of a political columnist and an editor. And he's also a certified beer judge, which is kind of quirky. And one of the books we're working on is a guide to East Tennessee breweries. It'll be from northeastern Tennessee down to Chattanooga. And we have an argument, who likes beer better. Brad has been a home brewer for about 25 years. The best brew I've ever tasted has been at his house. I drink Budweiser non-alcoholic, and I say, well, that just shows that I like beer more than you do, that I'm willing to drink this. So I don't know. I don't know if it's true. So that's my partner. We're an independent publisher of nonfiction books from Greater Appalachia, an area we loosely define as North Georgia to Maine, the length of the trail. We focus on people, the outdoors, food, and the environment. We think we have a niche as a nonfiction publisher. Lots of people publish fiction. I did publish a novel a long, long time ago with Simon & Schuster. Didn't do so great, so that's why I only published one. So we feel like this is what we know the most about. Another area, it's easier to get publicity if you're a nonfiction, if you have a nonfiction book. For example, if you have a Civil War topic and there's a Civil War day, you can go to the media and say, I'm writing about this. Having decades of experience in newsrooms, there just aren't as many reporters as there used to be. And if you come in with nonfiction, you're giving them free content, they're giving you free publicity. Sort of the deal that you make. So I think it's a lot easier to get publicity for a nonfiction book. That's another big reason why we took this route. We also think that there's a niche between people who want to self-publish and big publishing houses. There's a lot of really good books that might not have national appeal. We think they'll have regional appeal. And we say we're an Appalachian publisher. People will argue, what is Appalachia? Our definition is the length of the trail and as wide as we feel like it. A lot of people down here say, not above West Virginia. Personally, and you'll back me up on this, I feel Pittsburgh is the capital of Appalachia. But I think part of being Appalachian is arguing about just what the heck it means. So between Brad and I, we have combined 75 years of experience. When I was young, I used to make fun of people who would say that. Usually you'd say, here's my credential, I have a best-selling book. It's like, well, I've been doing this for 40 years. I guess you go with what you have. So we did 2 books last year, our first books. East Tennessee Garden Stories. They're almost a collection of oral histories of how people got into gardening. If you like to garden, you'll love the book. If you like people, you'll love the book. So they're people stories. So that's what we always want to do, is tell people stories. And we like to think of it as, who all is a gardener?
Used to be.
Yeah. But if you go to someone else's house, and yet you always will learn something. My partner Brad, he and his wife, their backyard is like this, and they have the most magnificent container garden in their backyard. So I learned that from them. And then I might not be a very good gardener, but I'm a good composter. So when Brad came to my house, he learned about composting, and that's sort of what the book is like. You talk to your neighbors, you learn something about them. And then 23 Tales, I don't know how we got the idea for Ghost Story. We wanted to do an anthology. Whenever I travel, I always buy ghost stories. I remember years ago going to Nantucket, beautiful island in Massachusetts, and I bought every ghost story collection I saw. It's just an interesting slice of life. So that's why we did that. It was an anthology. We have stories, I think, from 6 states there. We had so much fun doing it that this year we're going to do 24 tales. Not sure if we'll do 25 tales next year. We'll see how this one goes. So those were our first 2 books. So we're a new publisher. We're going to do at least 4 books this year. The Good Pint Trail is a guide to East Tennessee breweries. Open House, mostly true tales of crazy and southern real estate. A friend of ours has been a realtor for a long time. 24 tales. And then we're going to do a holiday anthology. We haven't come up with a name yet. And we're taking submissions until May 15th. And we don't pay a lot, but we do pay 10 cents a word. We'd like to pay more, and maybe down the road we'll pay more. But it would be a good way to get exposure. So you can go to our website, and if you have an idea, we're going to get a lot of Christmas stories, but I would like a range of stories. We have an interesting 4th of July story from, did anyone ever remember the Constitutional Minute? It was a syndicated radio show. Stuart Harris, he lived in Knoxville for a long time. He moved to Florida. He wrote a great story about the 4th of July. He was playing hangman in church with his son, and the minister called on him, and he wasn't paying attention. He said, "You can fill in next week, can't you, Stuart?" So on the 4th of July, it's a great story. We're going to publish that. So it doesn't have to be about Christmas, but we're looking for holiday anthologies, St. Patrick's Day, April Fool's, Earth Day, whatever you think. Check out our website. We'd love to see some submissions. What we're looking for from authors: books that fit our mission. Nonfiction. Can't tell you how many people say, "But are you going to publish novels?" Friends of mine, "You're going to publish fiction?" No, we're doing nonfiction. Nothing personal. Stick to that. We want people who are going to be committed, and we want people who are going to be professional. You'd be surprised some of the stuff that comes in via email. So some things. This is Jeanette Brown, a wonderful novelist in Knoxville. She used to work at Union Avenue Books. You might have seen her there. I just put her picture there because I wanted to illustrate the slide. So 3 big questions to me, if you're an author. Are you learning the craft? Are you putting in the effort? Are you getting the right feedback? Often this isn't the case. And as people start off and learn, you learn the hard way. So learning the craft. What's everybody doing right now? You're here, you're networking, you talked about conferences that are good. What are other ways that you learn the craft? I'd like this to be a discussion so I can learn from you as much as you learn hopefully you'll learn something from me.
So we have a critique group that meets. Yeah,
right.
It helps.
How's that go?
People will submit chapters, and we go through and just give suggestions or find errors and things.
Writing group is great.
Writing group.
But what other ways are we learning the craft?
Online classes.
Online classes. It's something that really has taken off. Danita and I were talking before how you can see great writers at Malaprop's books from the comfort of your living room. So the whole world has opened up in recent years. Any other ways? Yeah.
I've used Write, Publish, Sell, which is they do an online summit annually.
Yeah.
And they also they cover groups for beginners, people in the middle, and people experienced. Yeah. And then they have mentorship that you can join at different levels, and so then you have access to hear about information. I've learned a tremendous amount from them.
So no matter where you're at on your writing journey, you can always learn more. I overdo it with newspaper, and I worked decades in newspapers, but a paper that was once great was the Oregonian in Portland, and they used to do a lunch and learn. And they said every time they had a lunch and learn, the people in the front row were the Pulitzer Prize winners. The reason they got good is because they were always learning. I lead a writing team at Eastman. There's 7 of us. We range from my age, which is older, to 25-year-olds, and we all learn from each other. We learn as much from the 25-year-olds, social media, they're digital natives, as hopefully we can help them with their writing. So you can always learn. It's something we should always do. What's the most important thing about learning writing? If you said one thing you should do.
Writing.
Writing? Good. Read. One or the other. One or the other. So I'm going to start off with reading. If I can get the slide to move. Okay, what do you read? What's everybody read?
Nonfiction.
You read nonfiction? Just nonfiction?
I'm into Christian speaking, and
Right.
that's what my book's about. So honestly, if I'm not reading the Bible, it has to be something pertaining with the Bible in it, and
Okay.
something spiritual.
Gotcha.
That's all I read.
How about other people?
I read all of those things.
You read all of it.
Biographies or memoirs.
Well, memoirs, right? And we all have certain things that we love to read the most, and we'll I'll be on a kick where I'll read crime novels, or I'll read coming down. I'm ashamed to say I just discovered audiobooks after years and years. Maybe 30 years ago, I used to listen to books on tape in your car, and then I hadn't. And one of my friends, who I'll talk about later in this presentation, anyone on Goodreads? That reading challenge, and people talk about how many books has everyone read the past year if you're on Goodreads? 50. She read 150 books. And I'm like, how do you do that? I have 2 jobs. How do you do that? She's like, audiobooks. So if I'm at the gym, audiobooks. If I'm walking the dogs, audiobooks. On the way down, I was listening to a book on habits. You can really, I'm up to about 30 this year, which is shocking to me. Audiobooks. The thing I would say, read as widely as possible. How many people read poetry? I have had so many authors tell me, read a poem every day. It's a different kind of writing. I'll beat the dead horse about newspapers again. A great newspaper back in the day was a Concord Monitor. Mike Pride was their legendary editor. He always brought poets in to talk to his newsroom. They weren't writing poetry, but it helped their news writing. A lot of people look down on newspaper writing. I remember I was very involved in the Knoxville Writers Guild when I lived down here. Anyone read John Adams, sports writer?
Yeah.
I invited John. A lot of people, we were pretty dominated by poets, they were not happy that I invited John. I said, I think he's as good a writer as there is here. Michael Knight, who's a star fiction writer at UT, he agreed with me. He's like, my God, John Adams is great. John comes up. We had a packed house. Terry, what do you want me to talk about? And I just gulped. He just winged it. He had everyone in the palm of their hand. Magical. I can't tell you how many of those stuffy poets are now John. This is 15 years ago. I've been reading John Adams because he's a good writer, and you can learn from him. From newspapers, you can learn how to write economically. From poets, you write beautiful language. Christian writers, you learn about spiritual things. Try to be as well-rounded as you can. You might not think it will help you. I think it will. So give it a shot. You ever read books on writing? One of my favorites, The Art of Memoir. I've given this, I think, 13 times as a gift. I just bought it and gave it as a gift recently. Funny story is someone I knew more on social media than personally said, hey, I'm going to write a memoir. And I said, you have to read Mary Carr's The Art of Memoir. And her answer was, well, I've written 7 books. And I'm like, whoa, I better look this up. Couldn't find it anywhere. She's written 7 books. They never got published. With that closed mind, I don't think any of them ever will. I don't care who you are. If you're a writer and you want to write a memoir, read Mary Carr's The Art of Memoir. Another book I hear a lot about, The Artist's Way. Anyone ever heard of The Artist's Way?
Yeah.
Have you read it?
My cousin's read it.
Okay, so I was kind of like you. I heard all these people talking about The Artist's Way. I thought, this is some kind of cult. It's freaking me out. They had Artist's Way clubs. They would meet and they would discuss the book. And the woman, what's her name? Julia Cameron. She sold about 1 zillion copies of a bunch of different books. I was working in an ad agency in downtown Knoxville, and one of my colleagues' daughter came in. She's going through a really tough time in her life, and she was always upbeat and happy. I called her Dharma Girl. And I'm like, what is the secret? And she said she writes morning pages, and she got the idea from The Artist's Way. So a friend and I read The Artist's Way together. The book is great. So you might have preconceived notions. Go out of your comfort zone. And this book, it's been a while, but my sense is we grow up, children are very creative. And you're told, no, you can't. Creativity is beaten out of us the older that we get. And The Artist's Way sort of helps you rediscover the joy of art. Can't recommend it enough. Workshops, do we attend workshops? Sounds like we do. This was a great workshop I went to in Roanoke over the winter. It was $75. A couple hours from Kingsport. I thought, I'll go there and try to meet some writers. Had zero expectations. One day workshop at Hollins University. Is it Hollins College or University? Beautiful little campus. It was remarkable. One woman gave a talk on artificial intelligence. It was great. Network. Everyone here networks. You understand the value of that, right? Now, Rick Yancey. Anyone ever heard of Rick Yancey? He used to live in Knoxville. Probably written 40 books. Started off, he wrote a literary novel. Then he wrote a nonfiction book, Confessions of an IRS Agent. He was an IRS agent in Florida, and that sort of made his name. Then he wrote several series, a lot of young adult books. One of them was set in Knoxville called The Highly Effective Detective. He used to live in Knoxville. I don't know if he still does. He moved here. And the thing that sticks in my mind, he had a series of young adult novels. I think one was called The Third Wave, and I read in Publishers Weekly that the movie rights sold for $500,000. Just the movie rights. So he's really successful. Got him to speak at the Knoxville Writers Guild. Packed house, brought the house down. Last thing he said, what are y'all doing here? Shouldn't you be home writing? And he would tell us stories. If he was at his kid's Little League game, now maybe this is too extreme, he would be in the car but still typing, watching the game. He made a good point. You need to network, but you have to have the balance. The most important thing, reading or writing. I talked about reading, but writing. You got to have your fanny in the seat, writing. And do you put the effort in? A lot of times, I can take a look and tell if a writer has put the time in or not. It's not magic, it's hard work. A very famous writing book that, well, one thing, how often do you write? A lot of people want to be writers, but they don't want to write. I'd rather be an author than a writer. Author's glamorous. Writing, that's hard work. So how often does everybody write?
Every day.
Every day, good for you.
That's good.
Good, you have a set routine?
Yes.
I told you, I was listening to this book about developing habits down here, and it's like, first thing I should do instead of drink 6 cups of coffee in the morning should be sit down and write. I give this advice, not following it as well as I should. I do have a full-time writing job, though. Put the work in. All writing is rewriting. This is a quote from a book on writing well by William Zinsser. Can't recommend it enough. And Pamela Schoenwald is a historical novelist from Knoxville. She says, you can't rewrite nothing, so even if it's terrible, get something down on the page. It's a start. And I think often we think things have to be perfect before we put it down. Just get it out there. Stephen King, if you want to be a writer, read a lot and write a lot. There's no way around these two things that I'm aware of, no shortcut. I think he knows. Anyone here Shan Burke? Most successful novelist I know, best novelist nobody's ever heard of. Lives in Knoxville. He has written every day for more than 30 years. I know him. Believe me. He came up to Kingsport, we went somewhere to hike, and he's like, I'll be there at 3 o'clock. I'm like, Shannon, we'll worry about the daylight. He writes, nothing keeps him from it. His success, 4 critically acclaimed novels, including Black Flies, which was on the cover of the New York Times Book Review. Right now there's a movie out called Asphalt City with Sean Penn and some younger famous writer. Movie's getting panned. The book is incredible. He co-wrote the screenplay for Syriana, the film where George Clooney earned an Academy Award. He's co-creator of the Netflix hit Outer Banks. So he's a guy who, last time I saw him face-to-face, might have been in December, and he took 2 weeks off to go to England. Other than that, he had worked every day on Netflix. I mean, you make a lot of money as a creator on these shows, but you have no life whatsoever. Consumes his life. What's he do the first thing? He wakes up for an hour and a half, writes fiction. If a guy with that schedule can do it, we all can. Of course, I say that. We'll see if I do it tomorrow morning. Another really important thing is you get the right feedback. I have a friend, his wife said, "Oh, he's a great writer." Know him really well. I've never heard anyone else say that. So you got to be careful where you get your feedback from. I mean, you want people who are going to encourage you because it's a hard road. But you also want people who are going to level with you. Sometimes that hurts. And you have to find the balance. So where's everybody get feedback?
Well, the last time I got feedback from people in this group.
This group, okay. The writers.
And you're right, some of the people, and a neighbor, some of the people that you know the best are unwilling to be
Sure.
brutally honest.
Sure.
And some of the best feedback I got was painful but useful.
Yeah. And there, back when I was in school, it used to be that they would have critique groups and there was a badge of honor to be mean to each other. I don't buy that. You should be candid with each other, kind, but you got to make sure you get both, and it's hard to get. One good piece of advice I have, if you're in a writing group, try to get into a writing group with more experienced, better writers than you, because you'll learn from them. Although you can learn from everybody if you have an open mind. But there's nothing more important than getting good feedback, and it's so valuable. I had someone who's going to have, I think, we haven't made our final decisions yet, but we're going through for 24 Tales, and someone was a very inexperienced writer. We went back and forth. If people turn their stories in soon enough, I'll give them feedback, make edits, sometimes 2 or 3 times. If you turn it in the day of the deadline, you're not going to get feedback, you'll get a yes or no. So this was an author, a writer, that I think has good potential. I worked with him, and then he said, hey, I've written a bunch of stories, I was in the military, here's a side of life that a lot of people haven't seen. Great idea for a book, good nuggets. I said, you don't want to hear this, but you need to put more work in this. This has great potential. I think you have more potential than you have experience. And I was encouraging him. Shut down, never heard anything. It's not easy. If he put the work in a year from now, I think he could really have something, but you have to put the work in. Someone I heard who's pretty, can't remember his name, he's the editor of an annual poetry review, and he said, you want to be a writer, of course, but if I wanted to be a musician and I bought a guitar and took a lesson, how much time would it take for me to get out there and play in public? Can't do it overnight. Writing's the same thing. You got to put time into it. You got to work at it. And I'm not saying that to discourage people, but make sure you put the work up front. Good feedback. Toughest critic I know. Something I wrote. My 2 dogs are asleep. My wife can't keep a straight face. She's laughing. It's so bad. You got to have candor, encouragement. The right audience. I don't know anything about poetry. I can tell someone I like this or I don't, or maybe I think it's a little wordy, but I can't give you advice on poetry. So one of the things I've always heard is well, I was an English teacher, or my wife was an English teacher. Okay, that's great. Stephen King was an English teacher. Pretty good writer. That doesn't automatically mean you know how to give feedback. So make sure people who read your kind of books. I don't know anything about science fiction. I could read something and say, you could tighten your writing here, this doesn't make sense, this is a little wordy. I can't tell you how to write good science fiction, and I wouldn't pretend to tell you that. So that's something to keep in mind. Do you have the right, whoops, I guess I don't have the right editor. You have the right editors, because sometimes there's different kinds of editing. I feel like I'm a pretty good content editor. If you give me something, I'll say the story makes sense, you should rearrange it, you need more of this, less of that, which you do way up front. I'm okay, different people have different definitions of these. So, line editing going through, I'm okay at that. Proofreading, when it's all said and done, I'm pretty terrible. You probably saw typos in here that made you cringe. So I'm good at 2 out of 3. You have to understand, some people can do it all. I'm a little skeptical if they claim that. Where I work, we have someone who is like Rain Man, who does FQC. He's like our final quality check. I've never seen, I've been doing this for 40 years. I've never seen anyone as good at him as he is at catching mistakes. In terms of telling you how to rearrange and write it, he can't do it at all. So that's why we're both on the same team. I do one thing, he does another. So that's important. But the ultimate feedback, the market. So if someone is starting off as a writer, what advice, we've talked about it, what advice would we give them? Read a lot, write a lot. During the pandemic, I had a friend who said, Terry, I want to be a writer. I've always wanted to be a writer. So I said, read a lot, write a lot. And she did. Her name is Susie Trotta. She's the woman who reads 150 books a year. The first stories I saw from her were rough. After a year, we were talking about publishing her first book, and we're going to publish it this summer. Open house, mostly true tales of crazy and southern real estate. There's an odd excerpt from one of it. One of these pets was her beloved rooster, Francois. She talked about him quite a lot, and the relationship was more involved than I could have imagined. Francois, it turned out, didn't live in a coop outside. He lived inside her home and slept in her bed. The information led to my brain forming so many questions at once that I couldn't even get one out before she continued with even more information. Francois also rode in the car with her. How? Why, in a Chihuahua car seat she had converted for him to roost so he could ride shotgun. This book is funny and it's crazy and you run the gamut with it. So we're going to be happy to publish that. So, have any questions or I hope nobody sleeps with a rooster. I didn't mean to offend you if you did.
So have you heard of word weavers?
Of what?
Word weavers. It's a kind of a Christian writing group too. But the one thing about the critique that they do, they teach the sandwich method. So it's like bread, meat, bread. So it starts, everybody reads their work, they start with something positive, and then the meat is that critique or something they could do better, and then it ends positive. So at least it's positive, good feedback,
Right.
and it's kind of positive too. So.
Right, and it's, a good, we've all had this in our lives. People who only say bad things about us or people who only say good things. You're suspicious of both. So a fair critique will, give you a mix. Give you a sandwich, give you a mix, or that's something I'd look for.
But I've noticed that people don't like to be told about their work. They're very sensitive. They're sensitive to their work.
It's hard. And I think over time you get more used to it. But it's a growing pain. Yeah, Ernie.
I was taught to practice to have a tough skin, and when you ask someone to read your work, to critique it, demand brutal honesty. And when they give you brutal honesty back, it's hard to stomach it, but you have to say, thank you.
Yeah.
Brutal honesty.
And specific feedback. Well, I didn't like this. What didn't you like about it? My friend Shannon, his couple books ago, I read an early draft of it. We were in a coffee shop in downtown Knoxville for 4 hours. He was gone mental. And I'm like, wow, I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing this. He is too thin-skinned. And then he thanked me in the book, and he was grateful, and we're still friends. Well, I haven't seen him since December, so maybe we're not. Okay, good points all. Anything else, guys?
I get up every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning and write.
Good for you.
It's a routine I've been doing for almost 10 years,
Excellent.
okay? And I treat it like a job. You know, I get up, I do it, I write for about an hour and a half, and then I post something on, I write a very short inspirational thing,
Yeah.
okay? And I send it out, and I can usually get back at least 100 responses, feedback.
How do you send it out? On social media?
Well, both on Facebook, on Twitter. I posted here also. Also, there's a list of emails that I send to people who ask me to do. Most of that, it's about 4,500 people every day.
Nice.
So, but
Kids I work with would call him a digital native.
yeah, but what you have to understand in your writing is one of the worst things you can hear from someone is, "Oh, that's nice."
Right.
You talk about this thing right in the middle, you know, "Oh, that's nice," because you don't know whether they like it or didn't like it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things you have to understand, that you're gonna have to have thick skin. You have to understand that what you're writing is important to you, and you do the best you can with what you have and put forth all the effort on that. Not everybody's gonna like it, but some people are gonna like it, and those who like it are really gonna go for it. So you concern yourself mostly with satisfying yourself on how you write. If you write for everybody else's, if you write for other people's satisfaction, then are you really in control of your writing? You know, you have a hard time sometimes doing that.
So what do you do if you get contradictory advice? 5 people read it, 2 people like this, 3 people don't like that. Because you're gonna get that.
Find somebody you really trust.
Find someone you really trust.
When it's all said and done, though, it's still your work, and you have to
Yes.
go with what you like.
Yeah, it's a hard, I mean, a friend of mine had a story that we thought was gonna go into 23 tales. And I like to think of myself as not a heavy-handed editor. I think of it as a collaboration, and she thought I edited too much. And so we agreed it wouldn't be in the book, and I think we're still friends. But it's like, sometimes you're gonna disagree, and I like what you said, I like what you say.
Every response, I'm so sorry, I apologize, I didn't mean to cut you off. Every response you get, you learn something from.
Yeah.
Or you should learn something from every response.
Right.
Okay, some of them have some good credibility to them.
Sure.
You know, there are people criticized for 3 different reasons. They're jealous, they're envious, or they can't do it and they want to pull you down to their level. Those are the 3 reasons a lot of times people will.
And I like what Ernie said, find someone you trust. That is invaluable. That is invaluable. Okay.
So besides being a publisher, do you help people market their books?
Well, one of the things that we like to think, we have some expertise, having been in the media, we've worked, our jobs in corporate America is to sell stuff. So we like to think that we know how to get publicity. We got pretty good publicity with our first 2 books so far, and that we think that would be a selling point. We know how to talk to newspaper editors because we've been them. At least we think we do. I mean, so a lot of people will charge, a good editor is worth paying for. If you come with us, we edit the books. We feel like we have a pretty good editing team. I'm more of the content line editor, Brad is more of the proofreader. We have designers that we work with, we have photographers that we work with, so we like to think that we can do the whole package. Time will tell. We've only been at it for a year, so maybe 2 years from now everyone will have forgotten about us, or maybe I'll be able to quit selling chemicals.
What if you already published the book and you want to market it? Do you do that? Do you market it?
We just do our own stuff. We give you advice. We give you know-it-all advice, which I guess is what I'm doing here now.
So you only market what you publish?
Right.
That sounds
Right.
good.
We have full-time jobs, and I probably put 20 to 30 hours a week in this. So we don't have a lot of time to take freelance assignments, but we're happy happy to give advice. No one else always are. Okay, guys.
Check out the Howling Hills social media presence and YouTube.
And please, if you have a holiday story, right now the deadline is May 15th, but I haven't, we're still sorting through the ghost stories, so we might extend that to June. But if you have a holiday story, could be any kind of holiday. When we lived in Buffalo, Dingus, anyone know what Dingus Day is? It's a Polish-American celebration, and the two biggest celebrations were Chicago and Buffalo. It was always great food and a fun time. So if you have a Dingus Day story, I would be all about it. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Terry.